You spent more than a decade guiding procurement towards clarity and confidence in their careers. So could you tell me a bit more about your journey and how you've seen the career landscape change since you started?
Absolutely, I'd love to. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me on. So yeah, as you rightly said, I've been supporting procurement professionals in their career. It's actually it'll be 12 years, I think, this year. Prior to that, I'd been recruiting for a similar amount of time outside of procurement. About 18 months ago, I decided to set up my own career coaching practice specifically for procurement professionals. So I've been doing that since last year and absolutely loving it. Part of the reason for doing that was I saw that the market had really shifted quite significantly. So your question was, how have I seen the world of recruitment change in 25 years? It has changed so much. The procurement job market has changed massively, particularly in the last couple of years, I would say. We've obviously had all of these massive kind of world events, which has really kind of battered the financial economy in lots of environments. And I think it's a very different place. So definitely we've seen the last few years there's been fewer job opportunities. They still exist, but fewer of them, a lot more competition. We're seeing the way that companies hire their procurement talent has really changed as well. Kind of, it's evolving at pace, to be honest with you. And actually, I think that can be quite overwhelming for a lot of candidates that have suddenly found themselves on the job market and they've not looked for a new role for a few years. And actually, it's a very different marketplace right now. So that was another reason for me launching the business, because I recognised that some of the most amazing procurement people, they were really struggling, and they were really finding the new market conditions quite difficult to navigate. And very quickly you question the market, then you start questioning your own ability and questioning whether you've got the right skills, etc. So I felt that I had a kind of passion and skill set to be able to help people with how to navigate the changes that we're all seeing right now. So hence the business was born.
I know you did your research on this one as well, but career satisfaction scores in procurement can be stubbornly low. So if someone in procurement is questioning whether to stay in their role, how would you help them decide whether the issue is the role, the organisation, or their own skill mix in this day and age?
I did a series of market research, kind of interviews with a variety of procurement professionals at different levels, really to get a sense check of happiness levels within procurement. And it was really really interesting exercise.
What were the results from that research?
It was quite mixed, to be honest with you. I didn't, I wanted a broad cross-section of people. It wasn't just people that were looking for roles. I conducted it over a series of months. There were definitely some patterns around some of the signals that kind of people looking back, they now recognise if they're not happy, some of those kind of ways in which that might present itself, and some of the kind of the red flags and the alarm bells. There was a lot of talk of kind of people feeling that they were no longer aligned with the vision or the culture of the organisation, and definitely a lack of recognition for what procurement can actually do beyond just the cost savings. So the kind of the value add, the more strategic, that definitely did come up. But I think also, particularly where there was change of leadership, that's often where kind of challenges presented themselves. Everyone would be working to the same direction for a number of years, and then suddenly there's a change of leadership, and all that kind of good work, it almost felt like it had unravelled and they'd gone back like a number of years. So when people are feeling stuck, and that is quite a common feeling right now, more so than any other time that I've experienced really within the procurement space, because I think the world's tough, it's a difficult place to operate in. There's a lot of pressures on organisations. There's an awful lot of pressure on procurement leaders and procurement teams. And often they're being asked to deliver more with less resource and less people. The job market has been more challenging. I think at previous times, if it kind of felt really difficult, it's okay, I'll just look and I'll get another job. But actually I think a lot of people kind of feel either nervous about making the move because actually there is so much change going on, and there's almost something safe about staying with a business you've been with for longer. With some of my clients, we do kind of a whole series of exercises, if you like, and reflections, and together they build up quite a nice picture of actually what are the things that you need to be in place in order to feel really aligned with the work that you're doing and the environment that you're operating in. Once you've got that clarity, you can then almost kind of then look at your current situation and go, right, okay, well, I understand that this is really important to me. How is that kind of stacking up where I am? Because if we're operating out of alignment, that's when things don't feel right. That can really drain us and burn us out if we're not showing up as our true self. So I think, you know, those things are really, really important if you want to feel aligned.
In a scenario where, for example, someone is feeling a bit misaligned in terms of how they are perceived by the organization. Yeah. For example, let's take someone who is a procurement professional or procurement function that is just seen as a cost-cutting center. How would you guide a team member of that function to be positioned as something more strategic?
Ooh, good question. I think this is quite a common one, actually. Whether it's the perception of the whole function or an individual, it's raising awareness of those other things in the right way, and I think it all comes down to having the right relationships in place. All of this for me does really come down to kind of the development of those strong relationships. Things as simple as asking for feedback. That's something that I've worked on with some of my clients. They've come to me feeling stuck, and once we've kind of looked at it, actually they're not feeling valued. They're not feeling visible where they are. But when we break it down, like, some of that's on the other people, but some of that is on them as well, to take ownership of actually, showing really kind of what it is they're doing. And in some instances, they weren't asking for any feedback at all from their stakeholders, from their peers, from their team. When you've got that feedback, good or bad, if it's bad, great, it's constructive hopefully, and you can act on it and you can improve it. But if it's good, actually how can you use that to maybe develop other relationships and show credibility? So I think going back to that point of the kind of the value add maybe with the stakeholders, like, actually if you can show how you've delivered that value for other peers of that stakeholder and how you've gone from A to B with them, it's actually showing, it's telling that story, rather than just saying we're more than just cost savings. It's actually showing the benefit to them.
I had a question around softer skills, and I feel like your answer will probably be similar, but as these transactional tasks disappear, the soul-killing stuff that procurement hates, with advancements in tech, looking 12 to 18 months, let's say, and some of their transactional, soul-killing, manual stuff has been taken off their workload, which softer skills should procurement be prioritizing so that they're ready?
Taking away the kind of more transactional activity means that you're leaving the more strategic type activity. For me, that sits very much with those relationships, whether it's relationships internally with the business, with the stakeholders. Those relationships you can use for so many different things. Getting to know those areas of the business to really understand what the problems are, what the challenges are, and then how procurement can work with them and partner with them to resolve some of those challenges and issues. But I think it's also then the strategic relationship building with the suppliers as well. Transactional supplier interaction will be removed with some of the technologies that are being introduced, but actually that relationship side won't be, and so that's where the difference happens, and that's where the impact comes from. So for me it all comes down to the strategic thinking, the creative and innovative kind of thought process to look at actually how could things be improved and made better.
On the creative thought process, the workforce of the future is changing, so companies are going to be thinking harder and harder about who they hire. Now traditionally we used to look for functional expertise, but now we're looking for people who can ask the right questions. And that is actually what we call system thinkers, the ones who can see the bigger picture and ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And key trait of systems thinkers is that they're curious.
Yeah.
And curiosity is becoming a critical skill. So if you put a curious person in the right environment, give them the right tools, the sky is the limit in terms of what they can achieve, right?
Totally. Particularly in a more strategic environment, it's really necessary to have people that that know how to ask the right questions. Procurement are not going to be the deep subject matter experts on every single part of the business. Their expertise is as a procurement professional, but what they do need to be able to do is really question and challenge in order to understand like how they can then go about providing solutions in the right way to the business. It's a skill that absolutely can be developed.
I know you help people with positioning and branding. How would you go about helping position people as system thinkers to really speak the language of the companies they are trying to attract?
A big thing that I work on with my clients is how do you show the impact of that thing you did or how you did it, and how do you show the context? Like a lot of the time people, they'll just say, oh, I did this thing, that's it, I did this thing. Like they don't necessarily always showcase why did you do that thing, why was that thing important, how did you do it, and what impact did it have. And so to use your example of, let's say, I don't know, someone that's actually, gone in, looked at something, challenged why it's being done, come up with a better solution and implemented that better solution. It's being quite clever, I think, with the choice of language. And I think it's also leading with the impact of the thing that you did. So it might be that you're leading with the result of that thing, but you're showing that you achieved that result by challenging the status quo and upon challenging, deciding to implement a very different solution. So I think, even a word like challenging, a little kind of nod to the fact that you decided to do something a little bit differently. You really want to be able to show the story.
What have you seen separating professionals who simply progress in their career from those who become recognized thought leaders in procurement today?
Another good question, thank you. The thought leadership bit is an interesting one, because I think that's quite closely linked, I would say, to people that have been quite considered and intentional with developing their own personal brand. And I know a lot of people hate the phrase personal brand, like a lot of procurement professionals feel quite uncomfortable with it. I think it feels quite, marketing, not necessarily about procurement, but whether you label it that or not, I think it's just being intentional with how do you want others to perceive you, firstly, how and where do you show up, and how are you messaging yourself. So actually going back to that work that I said I do with a lot of my clients, figuring out who are you, what do you believe in, what are your values, what do you stand for, what are your unique strengths, what are your unique values, etc. What has been, the impact that you've had on people, what's the reputation. Like your personal brand, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. I think sometimes people think that is all about the biggest voices, the loudest voices, the most regular posters, the people who are up on stage, and some of that can really help, but I think also you can develop a really strong kind of brand for yourself and be known as someone that is a thought leader without appearing on stages, and even without kind of posting regularly on LinkedIn, etc. Like how you present yourself internally, how you want people to perceive you in those small interactions, one-on-one, meeting someone at a networking event, internal meetings, etc. The people that probably are perceived to be that often have, they've kind of created that and they've designed that for themselves, and they've been quite thoughtful about, where do I want to get to? How do I get there? How do I need to be at each part of that journey? And who are the people that I need to develop relationships with that are going to see, because there's no point being visible to the wrong audience and the wrong crowd. That's it's not going to be helpful at all. So I think often, and not always, because it can happen more organically, but I think often people that are recognised more as thought leaders, they've actually put quite a lot of thought into what they need to do in order to get to that position.
What's the single smallest takeaway that you would give listeners to future-proof their career?
Just one is really difficult, to be honest. But we've spoken about relationships, and for me, relationships they change everything. They really, really do. And I think my parting comment, and I've said this to a number of people over a lengthy period of time, but I think procurement professionals often they are very good at building relationships, but I think they do it for the benefit of the company and the role they're doing. But a lot of the time, procurement professionals are not intentionally building those relationships for their own personal career growth. And a lot of the people that I work with, they're coming to me with a lot of regrets and saying, why didn't I do this sooner? Why am I waiting until now? I've been made redundant, and suddenly I'm now thinking, why on earth didn't I keep in touch with all those people? Or why didn't I put myself out there a bit more in the marketplace, etc. So I think just relationships. So be intentional with who you want to build a relationship with, and then keep them as close as possible. And relationships are two-way. It's not, oh hi, I need this thing from you. Like, a true relationship is it's mutually beneficial. And so actually building relationships with the right people when you don't really need anything in return, you're just doing it to build the relationship, that's much more comfortable and often much more enjoyable and much more genuine than suddenly trying to develop a relationship because maybe, I don't know, you're looking for a new job or you want a speaking opportunity. But I've got a long list of other things, so just one thing is quite difficult. But I would say relationships.
I mean, they can sign up for career coaching to get the full list, but nothing list for one.
Absolutely.
Relationship. Yeah, got it. And that's a wrap for our conversation. Thank you so much, Donna, for taking the time.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on.